Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Augsburg Central Square, the Herald Sport team here. Slightly bleary-eyed, but we are here the night after a very late night and quite a humbling night for Scotland at the Allianz Arena to kick off Euro 2024. We've caught a bit more of the football today, myself and Gaby Mackay. You were at the fan zone last night, Gaby. I was at the game. We're going to have a brief chat about what happened at the Allianz, why it was such an emphatic defeat for Scotland, and what comes next, obviously having watched Switzerland versus Hungary this afternoon. So Gaby, first and foremost, talk us through what yesterday held for you and what the fan zone was like watching that game.
Yeah, so got down there early-ish, as did a good few of the Tartan Army, who I think had a few refreshments already, and a few of them were taking their own drinks in. I mean, I got there at about 11:30, and they had a good crowd there already, which was 9.5 hours before kickoff. So you could kind of tell from the start it was going to be rowdy. The queues for the bar, obviously, I wasn't in those queues for the bar. I'd like to make very clear, but having observed the queues from the bar, and we spoke to some people here in Augsburg earlier today, the queues for the bar were about 2.5 hours, I think. So there was
a long wait for a pint.
It's a very long wait for a pint, but no, the atmosphere was great. I mean, up to and just including the very start of the game, but it was a friendly atmosphere between the two sets of fans. There was, the people were packed in. I think it holds 25,000. It was well at capacity. I mean, there were tons of people away by the sort of early afternoon. So no, it was a great atmosphere. Unfortunately, from a Scotland point of view, that only lasted until about 9 minutes into the actual football.
Yeah, it was the exact same. I was at the game, and it was the exact same there. The atmosphere in the city was fantastic. So many Scotland fans that they had to close off the city centre square, I think, about 3 o'clock. It was very friendly, as you say, between the fans of the host nation and the travelling nation. It felt like a home game for parts of the day because of the sheer number of kilts you were seeing. And when you got to the stadium, it was the same. The national anthem was fantastic in the first few minutes as well. Let's get into the game right away then, because there was quite a lot of optimism going into the game yesterday that I think will have been somewhat forced after the result last night. I mean, my take on the game, Gaby, and we'll get into the details of it, was that Germany were so good and it really clicked, and we kind of referenced this in the lead up to the game, like, okay, if it clicks, they are going to be so difficult to stop because of the level of the coach and the level of the players that they have. There was always the other factor: will the pressure get to them? Will the fact that they've not performed well in recent tournaments play into it? But it didn't at all. So there was that facet, but there was also the fact that Scotland were really bad. And then I think when you put those two facts together, you consider the early Florian Wirtz goal, you consider that just small details like when Angus Young gets his palm to that first shot, it goes inside the post instead of outside. It was a night where Scotland needed a lot of those small margins to go in their favour. Germany were really clinical, and it became quite emphatic in the end. I mean, what was your take on the game, but also what was the mood like among Scotland supporters at the fans?
Yeah, so if we start, I mean, I think what you said there is right, and I think two things can be true, and I'm sure we'll get on to the mistakes that Scotland made, maybe that Steve Clarke made, the failings of individual players. I think you also do have to acknowledge that Germany just really turned up on that day. They have better players than Scotland do, which is not to excuse what was a very poor Scotland performance. But I mean, from the first minute when they had that chance, which I think would have been offside, where the gun sort of saved it with his head. I mean, in the fan zone there, you literally could sort of feel all the Scotland fans going, yeah, actually they look in the mood for this, and actually they look pretty good. And I think basically from that one, especially when they score after 9 minutes, I think you knew there and then that there was going to be no way back. And of course, when you get the red card and it goes 3-0 at half time, but I think it was obvious from quite early on that Germany were very much in the mood, very much up for it. The old cliche goes when it's a sort of weaker team against a stronger team that you need to have a good day and then to have an off day. Well, Scotland had a terrible day and Germany very much did not have an off day. So I think, basically, it was a long night. I'll put it that way.
A bad cocktail. You can see behind us, Spain have gone 3-0 up, so good start for them. Yeah, for me, I mean, Scotland, we're used to seeing them. I always think with Scotland on the Steve Clarke, there's games where you can question what they do with the ball, and that's maybe decreased a little bit in the last couple of years, but you always think, okay, they're going to be pretty resolute. Last night they got, I mean, it felt like Germany were playing a different sport at points. I don't think I'm over-exaggerating. There was a huge, this wasn't a game where Scotland were in it at any point. They didn't have a shot on goal. I don't think they probably had a touch in the opposition goal. What went wrong for me is that what Germany were trying to do, which is to get that front four of Havertz, Musiala, and incredible Wirtz and Gundogan, they complemented one another fantastically well. The freedom that they're afforded, Scotland could not track. They trace that back to the first goal, the ball that Cruz plays out wide, the fact that Wirtz is then free in the middle. And there was just, I don't think it's a fact, of course, that Scotland did not have a plan to cope with Germany. Of course they did. Again, it probably coincides with the fact that the plan that they did strengthen the tactical approach. They did go for not really completely pressing high, but still having quite a high line. So when Germany did go over the top, as you saw from the first goal, they pushed all the way back, which leaves that space in front of the defence. But they also didn't really camp in their own box and try and keep things tight and compact and show rounds. It kind of felt to me like they were caught in a little bit of no man's land, and they never really got close to any one of the German players, did they?
No, they didn't. I think probably part of the idea was, you saw like Kroos was playing those balls out wide, and there's probably part of the idea was like, well, look, they can have it wide because we're happy for them to put crosses into the box. What happened was there was a big gap between the defence and the midfield, and they were just cutting it in between there. I mean, that's largely where the first goal comes from. All right, Angus Gunn should save it, and I do think there's an element of, they talked before the game, or we won't be overawed by this occasion, but they looked, when Germany came out pressing high, hard and fast, they looked rattled a lot of the time. I mean, Germany had better players, but there were a lot of players in there, guys like Robertson, guys like Tierney, guys like McGinn, who play at a high level and played in these big games, who did look like they were rattled. I mean, they couldn't keep possession. They just didn't look like they were. I'm not suggesting they weren't up for it, but they did look actually a little overawed by the occasion, which was the one thing, before that everyone was insisting that we sort of learned from the last time, that going into this game, it'll just be another game. We've gone through qualifying very well. Okay, being on a bad run coming into the tournament, but we've learned from this experience, and it just looked a combination of the two things. The tactical issues that we talked about, and they also just looked like they kind of were a little bit caught in the headlights at times.
Let's talk about Steve Clarke's team, because I think I'm right in saying that the last Euros in 2021, Billy Gilmour didn't play the opening game against the Czech Republic, and that didn't go very well. Now, I'm not saying that had Billy Gilmour played yesterday, that much would have been different based on what materialised. I think we spoke about this before the game, myself and Johnny, that the reason they didn't play Gilmour is because they wanted to be direct. They thought, okay, not that there's no point in trying to play against this German team, but because they're so narrow, I think they wanted to try and go into the front line quickly. But again, Chad couldn't put the ball up, and that's, I think, one of the reasons Scotland suffered, is that not only could they not get up to attack themselves, but they couldn't get up the pitch to give themselves a breather. Tony Kroos passed the ball through the defensive block. Did Steve Clarke get his team wrong? And if so, what will be changed going into Wednesday? We're going to talk about that and build up to that in the next couple of days. But there was a lot of surprise that Gilmour was named on the substitute bench when the team came out about an hour before.
Yeah, and I think it was justified surprise. I think particularly this game, I think if it was the Switzerland game or the Hungary game, you could maybe understand going with Christie, but if you're coming up against that Germany team, they're going to press, they're going to be very good in midfield. And I think possibly what you want is someone who is able to take the ball in and sort of dribble through that press and get you out, because there's not a lot of pace in the team to sort of break through the press that way. So you probably want someone that's going to be able to take the ball in, sort of go either way, shrug off, play through it, and then open up space that you can maybe attack into. I mean, the sort of breakout game that Billy Gilmour had for Scotland was England at Wembley, and it was a very similar sort of situation, so it was quite a surprise that he didn't play. And Ryan Christie sort of brings you a different threat. He maybe brings you a sort of goal scoring threat from range, but we didn't have a shot on target. We weren't ever close enough for him to have a shot from there. So I think he probably did get that one wrong. But as you say, I don't think if Billy Gilmour had played, we would have won. I think we'd have still been beaten because Germany were just so on it. But that doesn't mean that wasn't an error on this part.
Yeah, the final negative, shall we say, in the game, because obviously the group still is alive, but there's no denying that that is a very demoralising way to start the tournament, not least because of the anticipation of the build-up. Angus Gunn is coming for a fair bit of criticism. First and fifth goal probably could have done better with that. Scotland aren't going to change their goalkeeper, but again, that probably just feeds into what we're speaking about, this being a bad cocktail of a game where Germany's expected goals is something like 2, and I know Clarke then, after he had looked at the stats, but did reference the fact that there is expected goals around that. So they were really clinical. Again, it's a slightly different game if your goalkeeper gets his hand to the first and the fifth goal and maybe keeps the score down somewhat, because it wasn't as if Germany created an expected goals of 5. They were very clinical. Again, it was a story of those small margins just not falling in Scotland's favour. He's not going to change his goalkeeper, is he? But again, probably just descriptive of the type of game that it was.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you look at the goalkeepers that can come in, there's no one who can really compete. I mean, people might say Craig Gordon, but he didn't cover himself in
He's
glory.
not here as well.
Well,
so
exactly, that's what I'm
difficult,
saying. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He didn't cover himself in glory in that friendly, and he didn't keep him in the squad. And we know Clark's loyal to players that have been in the squad, so there's probably a reason that he went home. And then the alternatives at the moment to Gunn, I mean, with all due respect to them, you know, they're sort of mid-level Scottish Premiership goalkeepers. So again, I think it's one of those that, as you say, a cocktail of things went wrong on a bad night, and again, he's not going to change the goalkeeper. The other one, again, not to make excuses for Scotland or to make excuses for Clark, you look at right wing back, and Anthony Ralston's had some criticism. Who else is there? Patterson's injured, Hickey's injured. The only other option would be to play McCrory at right wing back. He's not naturally a right wing back. There are limitations within the squad. If you're a nation the size of Scotland, when you do get injuries to key players like that, it's going to have more of an effect than it would on, for example, a France or a German.
Yeah, and I guess if you had Hickey and Patterson and Lewis Ferguson as well, maybe there's those options. I've missed one of the players. Lyndon Knights probably again need to play Jensen to just get you up the pitch. It is important to remember that Scotland are missing players in key areas, and they're already a team that are imbalanced with their attacking threat on the left-hand side. So when you miss Patterson or Hickey, it allowed Germany to really trap Scotland. That was why they were never able to get up the pitch from the right. We were watching the Hungary-Switzerland game today, and Switzerland, for a team, a lot of the stuff I'd read, and I'm not going to pretend to watch a lot of the Swiss national team, but watched a little bit in the lead-up to the tournament, and I was encouraged by murmurings that, you know, the coach is under pressure and the squad is maybe slightly over the hill. Greenland Bolo hasn't played much football this season. The manager's trying to fit in Boyan, who was at Bologna, into a system that maybe doesn't fit him that well, so you're starting to think, okay, maybe this is a team who Scotland will have the better of. They looked pretty good today, didn't they? And that will, I guess, maybe slightly concern supporters. Look, it's going to be a different game when Scotland play these two countries, or it should be, because they should be better matched. But what was your impression of the game? Because the Swiss performance to me was certainly better than I was probably expecting.
Yeah, it was definitely better than I was expecting as well. I think particularly first half, I suppose you could look at it glass half full or glass half empty when it comes to both teams. If you want to look at it glass half empty, Switzerland were really, really good in that first half. They made Hungary look like which we know they aren't a poor side. I mean, they've lost one game, I think, since September 2022 or something. Yeah. They made them look really, really poor. Obviously, in the end, got a 3-1 win. That gives you fear going into that. And then if you want to go glass half empty again, Hungary second half came into the game, sort of Switzerland lost control of it. You would say they obviously got a late goal sort of on the break, but Hungary looked good there. So you think, well, actually, they've showed in that game as well, even after what was a poor first half performance, they've got something about them. If you want to go glass half full, Switzerland played really well, went 2-0 up, and very well could have drawn the game in the second half, despite having dominated that much. And Hungary won no great shakes in the first half. So I suppose it depends if you want to be optimistic or pessimistic, I suppose.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely optimistic, but maybe not after yesterday. So as we come to a close, Scotland obviously travel to Cologne to play Switzerland on Wednesday. Last night was never going to be a game in which they qualified. It was never the game where points were expected, but there's no denying the manner of the defeat was discouraging, because even the late goal, if you keep the game to 4-1, you've drawn the second half 1-1, you've kept the score down, the Tartan Army have got a bit of a cheat at the end when Anthony Rudiger puts the ball into his own net. You think, okay, the mood's slightly lifted. Then when you go and concede that late goal, again, slightly disheartening. Simply, again, we're talking about the level of Germany, but Scotland need to be worlds better when they play Switzerland in midweek, and they have quite a lot to prove, because if they do lose that game and effectively go out, it would confirm it, but given the goal difference, it would be unlikely. They do need to show that they belong at this tournament, don't they? And I'm sure that will be the message leading up to Wednesday.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think, you know, given that this is the first sort of proper tournament that Scotland have had since 1998, obviously qualified in 2020, but two of the games were at home and fans couldn't really go. You know, it would be a real shame for the amount, I mean, it's been spoken about ad nauseum, the amount of Scottish people that have come over to really go out with a whimper like that, to go into that Switzerland game, lose, and then, I mean, as you say, okay, mathematically you wouldn't be out, but your goal difference at that point will be at least -5, and you can get a maximum of 3 points to be one of the best third-place teams. It ain't happening. You need at least a point against Switzerland, really, and even then, that probably leaves you needing to beat Hungary by a couple of goals, given that the goal difference is -4 at the moment. So I think very much going into the Switzerland game, first of all, you just want to see a better performance, as you say. Show you belong at the tournament. Show it wasn't a fluke. And to be fair, of course, it's not a fluke if you win 7 qualifying games in a row. I'm not suggesting that it was, but show you actually belong at this tournament, and show that it isn't just same old Scotland, same old, just disappointing on the big stage. Which, let's face it, is what happened in 2020. Now, England, obviously a good team. Croatia, obviously a good team. In Czech Republic, no mugs, but to play that game at Hampden, to lose 2-0, then have a battle and draw against England and just be played off the park by Croatia. I think a lot of people at the time, that was a real damp squib of being at a tournament, and you really don't want that the second time, especially when, as I say, so many people have been invested and come over here and watching back home. It would be a real indictment, and I think we'll put a lot of pressure on the manager and the squad.
Okay, well, we're going to spend plenty of time building up to the game. We're off to Cologne as well. We'll bring you full coverage of the city, the fan zone, the stadium, the press conference. You can get all of that over on the Herald Sport. Keep up to date with us across all our socials and the website. Plenty for you to read over there. Until then, we'll join you tomorrow as we continue to build up to Scotland versus Switzerland. But thanks for joining us, and speak to you soon. Bye for now.